And usually the game continues with knight to f3 and then bishop to e3 and after that white castles. But Carlsen chooses a different line. He goes for knight at g goes to e2 and this setup is known as the Hungarian attack. The idea is simple, bring the knight to g3 and then start pushing h4 and h5 to launch a kingside attack. And after that, uh, he simply castled knight to g3. Now, and basically, white is now going according to his plan. And to stop this, h5 might be the best option for black, but Radjabov decides to take the center by e5. But Carlsen simply pushed the pawn further, closing the center. And now a5. And basically, this move stops any future advancement of the b pawn. And finally, he goes for h4. And basically, he wants to push h5. So to stop this, okay, so now bishop to g5. Carlsen pins the knight and Rajabov just slides the queen to e8. And this is a very important move because it not only unpins the knight but also stops the attack. I mean, let's suppose instead of queen to e8, if black tries to improve this misplaced knight by, let's suppose, knight to c5, which looks natural because we are just improving the position of this knight, but it's actually a big mistake because of bishop takes h5. Here white can sacrifice the bishop because after g takes h5, now comes knight takes h5, taking advantage of this pinned knight. And you can see now queen to f3 is coming next, which creates immense pressure over the knight. Also, the h file is now open for the pawn. And because all of this, you can clearly see this position would be better for white. Okay, so after the move queen to e8, basically now Carlsen decides to go for queen to d2. And finally, Carlsen castled alongside. And that seems like an inaccuracy because it's very risky. And as you can see, now this king is on the same side where black can launch an attack by pushing the pawns. But before that, uh, basically he goes for knight to g4. Excellent move. He immediately attacks the f2 pawn. And here Carlsen just captures on g4. And guys, that's a mistake because white gives up his good bishop. Instead, the best move for white is to defend this by the move rook to f1. And here's the thing. Let's suppose instead of knight to g4, you also cannot go for bishop to e3 because yes, you are defending the pawn, but after knight takes e3, and here the best move is to capture with the f pawn because if queen takes e3, now comes king to h7, and in the next move you can see black is threatening bishop to h6. So to stop this, if white slides the king, now black will however go for bishop to h6, attacks the queen. And since this only f3 square is left, and after that bishop to g4, you can see now the f6 square is only left, and finally knight to d7, and you can see black successfully traps the white queen. Okay, so in the actual game, after bishop takes g4, simply bishop takes g4, and now black has the bishop pair and a good position. And here Carlsen goes for bishop to e3. He wants to destroy the pawn structure by capturing this knight. So that's why to stop this, simply b6. And now Radjabov simply goes for king to h7, and basically he is getting away from any potential pins on the g file. And now Radjabov pushed a4, gaining more space on the queen side. And now Carlsen goes for knight at g goes to e2. His intention is to play g4 so that he can open the h file. But Radjabov finds the best move f5. He is basically counter attack on the queen side. And after takes g takes f5. Okay, so let me go back. Uh, Here is a question which comes in your mind, that why black didn't capture with the queen. The reason is simple. He basically wants to place the queen on this g6 square. I mean, let's suppose if he captures with a bishop, we are now attacking the queen and the king. So what's the problem? I mean, it looks good because our light square bishop is now keeping a laser eye on the white king. But guys, that's not the case. Because first of all, white will improve his knight by knight to e4, which also blocks the diagonal of this light square bishop. And if you decide to capture the knight, simply f takes e4, attacking this bishop, and after this bishop goes to g4, which looks good at first, but after doing all of this, black actually runs out of a good square for this queen. I mean, if queen to f7, then white will simply brings the rook to f1 and start targeting these all squares. And you can see now this square like c5 and b5, they all are already covered by the white pieces. And uh, and while you know if black tries to improve the position of this queen, in that time you can see white will get ahead in development. So that's why, let me go back. Yup, so that's why after capturing with the G pawn, you can see it also improves the pawn structure as well as connect all of these pawns. And after that, rook to h3. And basically, Carlsen goes for this move so that he can attack the queen if black goes for queen to g6. And after that, king to h8. And you can see what's coming next. So to stop this, f4. And you guys, and basically here, yes, black can go for a3, basically advancing the pawn, and obviously white can't capture because this will destroy the structure. So that's why, if let's suppose b3, and now comes knight to e4. Basically, we are going to increase pressure on the knight on c3 because we already removed the one defender of this knight by pushing this pawn. So basically now you can see black is threatening to capture this pawn, which opens the diagonal of this dark square bishop, which increases more pressure over the knight. So to counter this, if let's suppose rook to f3, now comes queen to g6, attacking this pawn. So to defend this, if rook to g1, now knight takes g3 check, knight takes c3, e4, attacking the rook. And after this rook goes to h3, simply queen to c6, creating more pressure over the knight. And if let's suppose rook to c1, now comes b5. And you can see black is now threatening to push b4. So that's why takes bishop takes b5. And obviously white cannot capture this bishop due to the threat of queen to a1 mate. And clearly you can see this is completely winning for black. Okay, so after the move f4, yeah, let me go back. Here, Rajabov directly goes for knight to e4, which is an inaccuracy because now white can easily tackle this by just exchanging the knights. Here, Rajabov goes for bishop to g4. He attacks the knight, and in this position, Carlsen decides to capture the bishop. He basically sacrifices the exchange. He gives up a rook for a bishop so that he can activate his pieces. And here, Rajabov goes for queen d7, which is a bit passive move. Yes, black is defending the g4 pawn, but instead of queen to d7, here black can consider the move b5. And if white captured the pawn, simply b takes c4, and you can see white cannot attack. So that's why he will definitely capture the pawn, and after that, a3 with the same idea of destroying the pawn structure. And if b3, simply queen to g6 check, attacking the knight as well as the king. So knight to e4 is now forced. So that, and finally queen takes g2, and you can see this is winning for black. Okay, so let me go back. After queen to d7, Carlsen goes for a3. He stops this pawn push, and now b5. Finally, you can see black played that move, and he is now attacking the queen side. And basically, Carlsen tries to just not exchange, so he simply pushed it further, and he simply takes. And if bishop takes c5, then rook to f4, which attacks this queen. So that's why, to stop this, Carlsen, instead of capturing, he just advances the passed pawn. And now c4, h6. He attacks the bishop, and the only square left is. And now bishop to c5. Basically, Carlsen attacks the rook on f8. So that's why rook to f7. And now, guys, knight and you can see knight to h5 might be the best option for white. So that he can attack this active bishop, because you can see there is no good square left for it. But he missed that, and instead he goes for rook to f1. And the problem with that move is now rook to e8. And that's a good move. Basically, black is now defending the e5 pawn, and now you can see this bishop is free. And yeah, basically, this bishop is now free to move. Now, bishop to b4. Carlsen retreats the bishop so that he can stop the move c3. Now bishop to g5. And now for white, it's better to just exchange the rooks, and then simply knight to f5, which also guards this h6 pawn. But Carlsen directly goes for knight to f5, and the problem with that move is now black pushed c6. He is now threatening to capture on d5 so that he can target the queen. So that's why to stop this, bishop to d6, he blocks the file. And bishop to f4. Basically, black also blocks the f file, and in the next move, black is now threatening to capture this knight, so that's why knight to g7. He attacks the rook, and guys, in this position, Radjabov sacrificed the rook by queen takes d6, which is guys necessary because previously white was threatening to go for queen to g4, which would have been a powerful move. But now it's no longer possible. And guys, after this queen exchange, now just look at these connected pawns and just tell me how white is going to stop these flood of pawns. Here Carlsen now continues by attacking the bishop by pushing g3, taking benefit of this pin, but Radjabov just goes for king to h7, and basically he's not worried about this because obviously you cannot save this, and this is all, but this is winning because after takes, e takes f4, and now black will ends up with these two powerful pawns on the g and f file, which are connected and supported by the rook, and this endgame is just winning. How? Let's see. Basically, Carlsen brings his knight back. He attacks the rook, but simply rook to f6. He targets this knight as well as this pawn. And now Carlsen simply captures on b5, but f3. He basically advances the pawn, knight to d4. Basically Carlsen is getting closer to the pawns. King takes h6, king to c2, king to g5. And you can see now this king is coming closer to so that he can support the pawns. And basically Carlsen covers the g3 square so that black can't push this pawn, but simply rook to f3. And since black is now threatening to give a check, so that's why Carlsen just slides his king, king to h4. And you can see now this king walks into the white territory. Now, basically, he gives a check, but simply rook to h3, asking for rook exchange, which obviously white can't afford, so that's why rook to f1. He targets the pawn again, but simply g3, king to d2, and in this position, the final move by Radjabov is king to g4. And here, Magnus Carlsen resigned because clearly you can see now no one can stop the pawn from promotion. Because let's suppose if king to e3, if he tries to create pressure over the pawn, now comes g2 check, a discover check by rook, so king takes f2, g takes f1 queen, and king takes f1, rook to h1 check, king to f2, rook to h2 check, king to e1, and now this is just winning, so black can also sack the rook, king to f4, king to d2, d4, covering the third rank so that white king can't enter. So now white is forced to just move this king. So king to d2, king to f3, king to c1, and we will now go for king to e2. And you can see now this king is just moving, and we will slowly promote our pawn. And you can see now this is just winning. What an amazing game by Teimour Radjabov. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.